So, good morning, Periscope. It's Thursday. I think it's St. Patrick's Day. So, top of the morning, everybody. Top of the morning. I'm going to add one more part. So, I thought I covered all the flea markets, and then I realized when I was coming home the last time I scoped that there was actually a bunch more. So, I'm talking about really loosely East Coast flea markets, but really we're talking about New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, and Pennsylvania. By the way, my phone's acting up weirdly, so Periscope crashed a few times with me yesterday, and I had to reboot the phone even at one point. So let's see how that goes. So let me. I have another half an hour to get to Columbus Flea Market. So let me list some more of the other markets, and then hopefully we're done with talking about those kinds of things. Top of the morning. So another market is the Dover Flea Market, and that's more in northern New Jersey. And again, I'm using these location areas loosely. It's run by the same people, or part of the same people who run the Meadowlands Flea Market. It's a smaller flea market. It's in Dover, New Jersey. It's in a quaint little town. I believe it's $40. I could have that wrong. It could be higher. The last time I was there was about a year ago. It's a super pain for me to get there. Actually, it's a super pain for me to get home. It could take hours and hours and hours for me to get home. Somehow its location, heading back into New York City area, is a nightmare to get home, and it's really not worth it just because of that. It's a smaller market. Actually, it's a mid-sized market. There might be 100 vendors there. I'm not sure. It's held in the parking lot of a train stop station, no railway train. I guess that brings people to different towns or whatever. It might be Amtrak or something. I don't exactly know what it is. Or it might just be a local New Jersey rail stop. Anyway, it's a nice market. You can make nice money. It's just far enough away from me that there's better choices. So anyway, if you live in North Jersey or West Jersey, or you're on the east side of Pennsylvania, that might be a good choice. And I believe Dover is held only on Sundays, and if I'm not mistaken, it starts during April. So it's not a 12-month market. Another market in Pennsylvania is the Green Dragon. Honestly, I don't know much about it. I believe it's open on one weekday and the weekend. Lots of people like it. It's a big popular market. Again, it has a problem, at least for me, coming from New York City around the JFK area. It's just too far. So there's things like that. I should probably try it more often, but just the distance phenomenon is out there. As mentioned, I've done a flea market tour, and if I ever do a tour again, that's something I would definitely consider. Okay, so there's that. But so if you live in Pennsylvania, definitely consider that. By the way, I'm talking about general flea markets here. There are also specialized flea markets. For instance, there's another flea market in Connecticut called the Elephant's Trunk. I can't go to that one because they don't accept small electronics. So it's more about antiques, vintage things, stuff like that. I've actually never been to the Elephant's Trunk. I don't know what the fee is. I don't know when it's held. I believe there's like an elephantstrunk.com. I'm positive they have their own website. I'm positive I've been to it. So if you Google it, in fact, if you Google any of these things I'm talking about, you should find a plethora of information. Most have websites. Most are reviewed on Yelp or something like that. Although you have to take the reviews with a grain of salt. A lot of people think most flea markets are junk and suck, and new stuff. And they all think everything's counterfeit and all this other stuff. And it's not the case. There's good finds to be had even in bad markets, and there's bad things to be found in even good markets. So it's what you make of it, and of course, one man's garbage is another man's treasure. But in all reality, there's enough good stuff to get there. And so I'm talking about general purpose markets where there's 99-cent items, electronics items, soaps, and so on. There is furniture. There's people selling fruits and vegetables. There's people selling paper, specialty papers. There's people selling rugs. There's people selling CDs, legitimate CDs, not counterfeit ones. There's people selling phone cases. By the way, even though I do small electronics and accessories, I don't do phone cases. I do battery cases. And it's one way I separate myself from the other vendors. That way they can't really argue with me. And by the way, I'll mention this probably in more detail in another scope, but vendors have tried to get me thrown out of flea markets, and this often turns out to be one of the reasons why. And it's one of the reasons why I'm allowed to stay, or at least the argument ends, because I'm really not doing anything wrong and they're being idiots. So there's the Elephant's Trunk in Connecticut, which I think is spectacular, even though I've never been to it. New Jersey-wise, I think I've covered all the larger markets, but there's some smaller ones too, like New Egypt and the Golden Nugget. Honestly, I've never been to these two places because when I go to this site, I'm left confused. But they seem to be smaller markets with little homes or little sheds or little buildings, I guess. I don't know if they're sheds. Little buildings that contain antiques and so on. But I also think they have outside tables as well. I think it's smaller. So even though they might have 30 buildings, you wander from building to building. So it's more an antiquing atmosphere than a flea market atmosphere. Although with a lot of these discussions, there's a hybrid kind of definition of what something is. So let's just stick with things loosely and say that they're valid flea markets, even though I'm talking about general purpose ones. I think some of them are only open weekends, the New Egypt and the Golden Nugget. They're two different flea markets, by the way, I'm talking about. I think their price is low, unless you're getting one of these buildings. So I'm talking about setting up a table, an outside table. Okay? Let's see, what else do we have? And by the way, there are specialty flea markets. So that's why I'm trying to hit home. I'm talking about general purpose ones. There's flea markets that get set up only for antiques. There's flea markets, and I wouldn't even call them flea markets at this point, who are set up for only crafts. Okay? That's more of a craft show. There's flea markets that are set up only for glassware. So that's a glass show. Glassware being vases, plates, postmodern stuff. Any glassware consideration you have. Sculpturing, clay stuff. There's even pottery shows as well. So I don't really follow those. They do exist. There's also food markets where you can go. There's tons of farmers markets all over the place. All right, Periscope is popping up a message on my phone so I don't know if this is going to continue past this point. So let's see what happens. So there's farmers markets, which is really serving food and in some cases wines. There's a popular one, actually all through New York City. So we can talk about that. But a lot of these flea markets, like Columbus, technically is not a flea market; it's a farmers market. So they have lots of food there, as well as the outdoor flea market. A lot of the farmers' part is indoor or in another building, and tons of stuff. So New York City is congested. So we have things like a farmers market at Union Square, a farmers market at near Central Park, I think, at Columbus Circle. There's a farmers market at Prospect Park in Brooklyn. And by the way, there's a Brooklyn flea market, which is more about vintage stuff and bohemian kind of things. So that, I believe, is held in different locations. I've been to it, but they seem to keep moving it. It also seems to have a winter spot and a non-winter spot. There also seems to be a food part, which they call, if I'm not mistaken, the Brooklyn Smorgasbord, and it's very, very popular. There's lots of outdoor markets for food, with cooked food and so on through the world, and New York has its own flavor of that. I've been, for instance, to a food truck rally at Prospect Park. Delicious, delicious stuff. Some of it's garbage, some of it's not. So it's like anything. You have your favorites, you have your preferences. Okay. There's also the Long Island City LIC fleet, which is really also an artisan kind of market. So there'll be, I'm going to use again the term loosely, high-end art, where it's not necessarily paintings, or that might be included, but it's going to have woodwork and people who did hand things or something, handmade jewelry, handmade pocketbooks, things like that, as well as food. And I think the Brooklyn Smorgasbord and the Long Island City Flea they're now allowed to serve beer. So I think wine goes along with that. The LIC Flea is located in Williamsburg, I believe, near the Pepsi sign. I've been there, but I'm trying to mentally put it in near the Pepsi sign. And if I'm not mistaken, the new location of the Brooklyn Flea is at Dumbo. If anybody lives in Brooklyn, you know where Dumbo is. Actually, a lot of New York City people probably don't know where Dumbo is. Dumbo is an area of Brooklyn called downtown Brooklyn, even though it's uptown. It's in the north of Brooklyn. So if you think Brooklyn Bridge, that area, circa Brooklyn Bridge, is where Dumbo is. So your best bet for any of these things anyway is to Google them. The Brooklyn Flea and the LIC Flea. I think the LIC Flea is only open on Saturday or Sunday. I don't think both. So Google that. They have Twitters and their own websites and stuff like that. The Brooklyn Flea, I think, is open on Saturday and Sunday, and perhaps at different locations. So on Saturday it might be one place, and Sunday it might be another place. In Manhattan is the Chelsea Flea, which is more bohemian and vintage as well. It includes vintage clothing, antique jewelry, stuff like that. That's on 39th Street, between 9th and 10th Avenue, I think. The block is pretty filthy and dirty. I think normally it's the entrance to the Lincoln Tunnel, going to New Jersey. I don't know what their fee is. I've been there as a consumer and as a, quote, tourist, even though I live in New York City, just floating about New York City. And it's nice to spend the day there. And it's one of those things, again, you might not enjoy it, but whatever. There's also there's another market, I think it's also called the Chelsea Market. It might be a spin-off of this one. Somehow I think it's the same owner, if I'm not mistaken. On 26th Street, between, I think, 6th and 7th, or 6th and Broadway. It's held at a parking lot. And it's the same flavoring of stuff. So there's that. There's another one in Brooklyn at PS. It's either 231 or 321, which I believe opens this month, or if not, it's next month. So I think part of it's held in the PS is a public school here in New York City. So I think part of it's held inside, and most of it's held in the playground area of the school. I've been there as well. I haven't been there as a seller, but I've been there as a buyer years and years ago. I haven't been there recently. And I believe it starts really as a spring and summer market. I think it stops in the fall. I'm not sure exactly when. So I don't know the pricing. There's people there also selling vintage and bohemian stuff. There's people also selling, like, I'm trying to remember, curried meatballs and pickles and homemade breads. By the way, you get these at the farmers markets as well. Things like that. I think specialty nuts. There will be guys selling new stuff like scarves and whatnot. I don't know if they only accept certain things. It seems like it's pretty general. and it seems like it's a mainstay of the neighborhood. So that's good. So there's PS. There's also a Manhattan St. Anthony's, which is held on Houston Street on the west side. If you're a tourist in Manhattan, all right, I think I still have the connection. So there's St. Anthony's, which is held on the sidewalk. It's a smaller market, and it's kind of like a hybrid of everything I've already discussed. So it might have somebody selling scarves, somebody selling breads, somebody selling homemade jewelry. If I'm not mistaken, St. Anthony's used to be only on Fridays, and now I believe it's Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. I believe the fee is, depending on the day, $40, $45, and $50. I could have that wrong. So again, Google it. I'm fairly sure. In the past, I've been to their website. Some of these websites are not really elaborate, but it's there. And if I'm not mistaken, you can't have a canopy, and you only get a 5-foot table or something like that. So it's not intended to be anything that's interfering with the neighborhood, I guess. There's zoning things in cities, and New York City is known for that. And they have block associations, and people will complain, and there's legal requirements for fire hazards and things like that. So it seems to be a cute little market. I've driven past it numerous times, but I've actually never literally stopped. And one day I may actually do it. I'm selling other items now, like the model clothing. I could easily just put that on a luggage wheelie thing and plop that on a 5-foot table. I could do the same thing with part of my stuff. I don't have to sell all this stuff. The problem, of course, is it's on a day where I'm normally doing a major sale somewhere else. But if my car ends up being broken down or something, it's an alternative I should probably consider. And often on Fridays, even though I sometimes do markets on Fridays, I usually use that as my downtime. I'm either physically exhausted, or I'm going to get something wholesale. There's wholesale places in New Jersey, there's wholesale places in Brooklyn, and stuff like that. There's industrial cities, industrial parks that you can get stuff at. It takes lots of research to obtain and find those, but they do exist. We're a major port, right? New Jersey is a major port. Most of our stuff comes in New York City, comes through New Jersey. Container ships come here. If you look out from where the Verrazano is, there's container ships parked waiting for entry into the harbor, and they're coming really to New Jersey. There's tons and tons of the trailers. You know, the container ships have containers, and lots of goods are distributed from this point. So that means there's warehouses, and there's lots of merch sitting in warehouses. So it becomes a super challenge to find some of them. I'm assuming there's a few thousand here, and I've only found a handful. And sometimes they even use relay points. For instance, I was at one point getting flash drives from a company in either San Francisco or San Jose, and they would send by rail, because San Francisco, or is it, there's a main harbor for cargo ships over there too. The name escapes me. It's not San Francisco. It's I think one of the Occupy movements tried to close down that port. Things are flying into my car, and I just bumped over something. I hope I don't get a flat tire in that. How am I doing on time here? I'm 60 miles in, and it's 10 after 6, so I have about 25 more miles, and I'm trying to get there by 6:30. I have a spot already today, but technically, if you're not there by 6:30, somebody can take your spot. So, let's see, 25. I should be able to do it. I'm doing 80, so I have 25 miles to do in 25 minutes. So technically, I should gain time, although I'm going to be getting off the highway at some point. So we will have to see. Let's see. Oh, by the way, I said the 39th Street flea market was in Chelsea. excuse me, I'm tired. So the 26th Street one is the one in Chelsea. Chelsea doesn't go up to 39th Street. That's part of Hell's Kitchen. Actually, I don't even think technically even 39th Street is Hell's Kitchen. But the Hell's Kitchen part of New York City is normally around 9th Avenue and the low 40s. So technically it may not be part of it, but I guess there's overlap on the neighborhoods, and indeed it might be. So let me try to think if there's any other markets I left out. By the way, while I'm thinking, this is a good time to mention that I'm not even mentioning all the markets though. There's still other ones, and Google is your friend. Granted, I live in a city that's heavily populated, so there's a diversity of things. But I also find that some smaller areas, like New York City, doesn't really have a major general-purpose flea market anymore. There used to be Aqueduct, which was at the Aqueduct racetrack, using their parking lot, which turned out to be a huge market that was held 3 days a week. When the casino took over, there was a casino added that New York City allowed. That flea market had to be terminated, and so there really hasn't been a one place super general purpose market anymore, which is a shame. I wished it was held at City Field with the Mets played and things like that, but it seems like there's too many politics involved, zoning, private property issues, parking issues, and so on. By the way, there's also another food market I'm just thinking of, the Queens Night Market, which I think is either opening this month or next month. And it's run by a guy who wanted to mimic Asian night markets for food. And his goal is that you can get any food for less than $5. And somehow he's getting it subsidized. I think with some of his own money, some private contributions, and I think the city is donating it. It's being held in the New York Hall of Science, which is a science museum, a pretty cool science museum. That's in Flushing, next to Flushing Meadow Park of Queens, New York. So that is opening probably in a few weeks. I should check that out. They're on Facebook. It's called the Queens Night Market. They also have their own website, but it never seems to be up to date. I've gone there. There's lots of cool foods, and it's whatever suits your fancy. Probably when it opens up, it'll be super crowded. So if you're a food vendor, you have the Brooklyn Flea to pursue. You have the LIC Flea to pursue, and you have this Queens Night Market, which also has artists and things. This guy wants it to be cultural, so he has people singing cultural kind of things. He has cultural artwork from different areas of the world, and then food items. So you're not going to go there and find a hamburger or French fries. It's going to be some specialty dish from another country, for instance. And you need to have food handling licenses and stuff like that to do all that. So there's that one as well. And that's the point. These things keep popping up in my head. So I'm assuming certainly all major cities would have something similar. Okay. And even if not, as you're seeing, I'm driving 85 miles right now to a flea market. So if your local city doesn't have it, you may have to drive 50 miles, 60 miles, 40 miles, 100 miles to get to a market. Of course, there's a trade-off in that, which is that you have to know you're going to get a certain minimum when you get at this market, right? So there's considerations of that. For instance, by the time I add fees and so on, it may cost me $100 up front to do this market today. Okay, so I have to make at least $100 to make that back. Okay, and that's not profit. That's just making back what I did. So what about the cost of the products I'm selling to make the $100? So then you have to bump that up even more. So I may have to sell $150 just to break even. Okay, so then anything after that is a bonus. So there's things like that to consider as well. Of course, when you're starting out and building up, you may want to just take a loss or break even It's enhancing your skills, finding out about new things, stuff like that. So there's lots and lots to learn. You can even make the drive, maybe not set up as a vendor. Just go and do a reconnaissance. Look at the market, talk to the vendors. Some vendors are idiots. Some vendors might be busy at the time, but enough will talk to you. And just get a general feel of what's going on. What kind of clientele comes here? Who's buying? Just take a break at some point and just stand and watch what's going on without being offensive or arrogant and stuff like that. As well, if you ask a vendor a question they don't answer, cool, move on to the next vendor. They're not there to answer your questions, but most vendors do like being outdoors. They do like the interaction between their customers. Okay, so there's that. Okay, I'm entering super foggy, which is going to be theoretically a problem for me. So here's a weather-related condition. And by the way, it might rain later today. It started out that it was supposed to rain today, and it's been backing off. But this area is known for fog. I can't really set up my tables because I sell small electronics, and they're going to get soaking wet from the fog. So what I'll probably do is do up my canopy first, and then just wait it out. So there's something like that. What's happening? I'm getting a bagel. The bagels from this guy is pretty good. In fact, he might even be bringing them from New York City. We have well known for bagels, and we have a good sea level atmospheric pressure and so on to bake things like pizzas and breads and bagels. So, all right, I'm doing well. I have 5 miles to the exit now, so I might be able to pull this off. 6:12. I'll probably get there exactly at 6:30. Let's see, what else can we say? So remember again, as I said, another thing, most markets do not let you set up canopies or pop-up canopies or tents, whatever you want to call them, unless you have insurance. In some markets, for instance, there's things like that. So getting back, if you don't know if there's markets around where you are, Google it. Okay, I'm positive if I type in flea markets in NJ or flea markets in NYC, the whole area, probably even the Connecticut ones will come up in the New York City one, and the New Jersey ones will come in the New York City one, and the New York City ones will come up in the New Jersey ones. So again, I understand I live in a highly populated area. So even if you live in the boonies, Google it, try to figure it out. Look for flea market, right? Look for farmer's market. Look for vintage items. I don't know what you're selling. So if it's vintage stuff, you don't look for flea market necessarily. Just look for vintage market or glassware show. Sometimes the flea markets are held in hotel lobbies or held hotel ballrooms areas. And it might be in the next large city from where you are. And again, you may have to travel 100 miles to do it. And if it's a 2-day show, and a lot of markets are 2 days or something, there's some, for instance, in Stormville, I mentioned that in another one, that's a 2-day thing. You pay your fee, and you get it for the 2 days. A lot of people sleep overnight. They get a blow-up bed, they have a van, and they sleep there. Some areas don't have hotels near them and so on. And sometimes you just go for the 1 day, or you can go home and back. We've done all choices. So it's just a matter of something like that. And if you have other vendors that you know, then piggyback with them. You could share a room and save lots of money that way. Or like we don't, if it's me and my 2 daughters, we can't, the 3 of us really sleep in here, although we've done that. So if you know somebody with a van and they might be alone, then you could both sleep in a blow-up bed or something. So in the back of their van. Again, just remember, bring your supplies. It can't hurt to call a location. Okay. What's also very helpful is to get on Google Maps or some equivalent, MapQuest, and do a street view of the place to get some sense of where it even is. And also, when you're going there for the first time, have a GPS, because some of these places are in the complete total middle of nowhere, and get out the topology of how you're getting there, because it's going to be the day where your phone dies, and you're going to be getting off a highway and you're going to be able to nowhere and not know where you are. Okay. Speaking of which, I hope I didn't just drive past my exit. Preoccupied with this. So, all right. So I think I'm talked out. Hopefully these are helpful. Again, I'm going to also post this on YouTube. No, I didn't drive past my exit. It's right here. I'm going to post these on YouTube. If you'd like to email me, it's envythisstuff@gmail.com. envythisstuff@gmail.com. You're going to be able to find these on YouTube. My YouTube name is also Envy This Stuff. I found out it's Envy space this stuff. So it's going to be semi-hard to find. But since there's hashtags here, if you look for Periscope, pound Envy This Stuff, space YouTube, it should actually bring up the exact links to some of these, and then you can see subscribe to my YouTube channel. Okay. All right. I think I'm going to terminate this. Thanks for listening. Hello, watchers. Top of the morning, everybody. Top of the morning. It's St. Patrick's Day. All right. Good morning, everybody. I'm going to sign off.